It's my pleasure now to introduce to you Professor Aleksander Subic, the Deputy Vice-Chancellor, Research and Development at Swinburne University of Technology, to outline to us what we mean by Industry 4.0. As prior to his appointment as Deputy Vice-Chancellor, Professor Subic was Dean of Engineering and the head of the School of Aerospace, Mechanical and Manufacturing Engineering at RMIT University. He is internationally recognised for his research in engineering design and advanced manufacturing. Professor Subic holds positions on the Prime Minister Industry 4.0 Task Force, the Australian Advanced Manufacturing Council Leaders Group, is Deputy Chair of the National Aerospace and Aviation Industries Association, and he is a Director of the Oceania Cybersecurity Centre and of SAEA. He served on the Excellence in Research for Australian National Assessment Committee for Engineering and Environmental Sciences, and on the research advisory panels of the Defence Materials Technology Centre and the European Engineering Research Council. Professor Subic is an Honorary Professor of the Tsinghua University, Tianjin University and Nanjing University of Aeronautics and Astronautics. He is a Fellow of the Institute of Engineers, a Fellow of the Society of Automotive Engineers, and he's a Fellow of the International Energy Federation. After his presentation, we hope there's some time for questions, so please consider those as we go through. Ladies and gentlemen, can you please welcome Professor Aleksander Subic to the stage.
It's a true pleasure to speak to you this morning, and thank you for the invitation. A wonderful event, in particular focused on skills, which is an area I would say of utmost importance at the moment as we discuss Industry 4.0 agenda. Although we talk about technology, at the end of the day, this issue will be a major social issue and a social issue that hopefully will be addressed through broader engagement, education, training, and other activities, supporting activities. Minister Andrews' presentation provided a really good segue to what I will be speaking about, and in fact, some of the things she's spoken about in her introduction are really spin-outs from what we've been doing over the last 2.5 years within the Prime Minister's Industry 4.0 Task Force, or over the last 4 years in our various groups and various flagship programs that we have undertaken in this domain. My presentation will in particular focus on the changing culture of public-private sector partnerships. And this is something that I see as an essential platform if we're going to make sufficient progress in implementing Industry 4.0 strategies and developments. I on purpose developed this presentation in partnership with Siemens, our strategic partner, in true spirit of the title of my presentation. So it's something we've done together, and some of the messages and some of the findings that I will be communicating are really reflect our joint views that have emerged over the last 3 or 4 years of working together and through pilot programs. There have been many headlines over the last year in particular relating to education, training, the needs, the future, especially the future that's been driven by Industry 4.0 developments. You've even heard from Minister Andrews some of the comments in terms of education and training, as well as from John in his wonderful introduction about some of the comparative analysis with the OECD countries and so on. Many of these issues are really also, I would say, will support the need for the changing culture in public-private sector partnerships, which is more or less why I focused on that aspect. There are many things we need to change, many things that will need to evolve, and in fact, many changes are in progress because we've been proactive. Some of the key messages that we are seeing internationally that relate to education and training driven by Industry 4.0 developments is that we can't look at education and training in the same manner we have over the many decades in the past. It's not a conveyor belt where an educational institution just spits out a product and industry comes at the end and takes that product or chooses the best product that can buy or the best graduate that can buy. It is actually quite different. And best practice around the world, in particular Germany, and I'll talk about our partnership with Germany, as well as in USA and elsewhere, show that public-private sector partnership is required. Very close, deep partnership, co-investment, co-creation, if we're going to develop that skilled employee or that graduate with the required attributes that the industry needs. So industry cannot continue to sit passively and look at how education institutions try to achieve this on their own. Industry has to be an active participant, in summary. Also, another message that's very, very clear is going forward, we need new educational and training models, especially the ones that are focused on capabilities and skills. Hence, the focus of this conference is very, very important, and the title of the conference is very good, focusing on skills or capabilities, rather than disciplines or traditional disciplines, traditional programs. If we are not also developing graduates or trained individuals that the industry needs, we will also see global companies increasingly developing their own educational entities, their own universities even, and their own academies even. And in fact, there are good examples out there already. In Australia, we don't have those large companies that will do that. Hence, in Australia, it is of paramount importance that universities, TAFEs, and industry and government work together to bridge that gap. Moving on. 3 years ago, we've quite rightly started off by engaging with our partners in industry or future partners in Germany, the Industry 4.0 platform. The leadership in Industry 4.0 development came out of that country in a timely manner, in a proactive manner. Hence, through the advisory group between our government and Germany, there were a number of recommendations, and some of them related to the need, paramount need, to establish a collaboration with Industry 4.0 platform in Germany, to share experiences, to understand what they're doing, and to try to develop something in our context that will allow us to progress on this agenda. The German approach at the beginning, which is in the spirit of how they do these things, was very collaborative and inclusive, engaging all stakeholders. They looked at research, architecture, standards, norms. They looked at security of data. They looked at research innovation, with Fraunhofer leading that. They looked at legal frameworks. They looked at work, education, and training. They've involved unions. They've involved government. They've involved industry. They've involved universities. A very inclusive, very collaborative approach, engaging all stakeholders. That represented a really good benchmark of how we needed to approach this issue. Because as I said from the outset, this is a broader social issue rather than a purely technical issue. Hence, that inclusive, that strategic approach is something we've tried to emulate in Australia through the Prime Minister's Industry 4.0 task force that in a way mirrored those work streams and commenced the hard work, the journey on this agenda. Following 2 years of work, a number of reports were produced. A report relating to standards for Industry 4.0, where our Standards Australia took an active seat at the table of ISO. A report relating to Industry 4.0 test labs, working actively with the test labs network in Germany to basically develop a framework, national framework for rollout, development and rollout of test labs across the country that will serve as hubs for future engagement and activities in each state, and I'll say more about that. A number of papers and working group solutions around education, pilot programs, training, security, and so on. Following 2 years of work of the Prime Minister's Task Force, this has now evolved and is part of the Industry 4.0 forum under the banner of Australian Industry Group. And that was done strategically, because the ultimate goal was to really hand this away to the broader industry ecosystem in Australia, who will further drive this development and implement these strategies in a more timely and strategic manner within the industry setting. And that's at a very start right now, and we will see major developments in this regard. This second installment has also made an attempt to have an even broader engagement, with, on all levels, including Engineers Australia, Advanced Manufacturing Growth Centre playing a key role, and so on. That development is very important, because that's how we will continue this dialogue and this active engagement across the country, but also to continue our active partnership with Industry 4.0 platform in Germany, as well as with the Industrial Internet Association in US, and other stakeholders that have common interest in this domain. No single entity can progress sufficiently fast and sufficiently deep in this domain. Sharing of experiences working together is critical, transnationally as well as within this country. And this is an attempt to have a structure that will continue to drive that momentum for that sharing of experiences, for learning, for publication of relevant information, for diffusion of that information, for innovation in this domain to continue. Keep in mind that this is not something that is ready-made. Industry 4.0 is not here right now, where we are just kind of getting it off the shelf and looking forward to how to implement it. This is a 20-year journey. This is an agenda in the heat of development. Everybody's learning. What the difference between this industrial revolution and previous ones, hopefully, is that we've learned a lot from history and from previous industrial revolutions, and we're trying to do it in a much more timely, inclusive, and collaborative manner now, so that the next 20 years see less, hopefully, disruption and pain and isolation of segments of society, and we have a far more effective development. Part of that is obviously policies, the legal framework, regulations, the industrial relations framework, and so on. Hence, recently, the World Economic Forum has also communicated a new index that actually ranks countries in terms of that maturity of development in the policy domain. And luckily and happily, I can say that Australia appears to be in the top 10 there, in fact, number 10. But we're seeing South Korea, Germany, US, and others really way ahead at the moment. So hence, that's why engaging all the elements, all the stakeholders nationally, including some of the encouraging messages regarding the skills domain by Minister Andrews, are so important. The engagement of the Prime Minister's Industry 4.0 Task Force and now the forum is very, very active internationally. In fact, we've been working with our counterparts, workstream leaders and platform leaders and test lab leaders in Germany actively throughout the period, having annual reviews in Germany like this one, and sharing those experiences and developing together the know-how to implement this better. And trying to contextualize rather than just emulate what's happening in Germany. While we are learning from the German experience to fast-track our own developments, we're spending very much most of our time engaging locally and contextualizing, developing solutions that are far more appropriate for our ecosystem, which is essential. You can't just carbon copy, whatever's there. One of those flagship programs was the first Australian Diploma in Industry 4.0 Advanced Technologies that we've developed within our TAFE program in partnership with Siemens, Australian Industry Group, and Karen Andrews' department as well, with strong support by the federal government. We've done that strategically at the outset, when there was no such program nationally, to pilot, in a way, a program through design thinking and learn through that. But also to pilot a new mode of public-private sector partnership, which was essential for development of such a program. Such program, I can tell you, would never have evolved if an educational training institution tried to do it on their own. Why? First of all, the Australian Industry Group rallied a large number of companies, supply chain, to provide input. Siemens brought together the Siemens Academy from Berlin to provide their curriculum and insights, even their staff and trainers to develop professional development programs with our staff. Then the supply chain of Siemens supported also by Australian Industry Group, came together around the same table to look at fundamental elements that are just not curriculum elements, and that is building the internships for all the students, and industry-based practice for all the students throughout the program, even securing employment for all the students at the end of this journey. What this demonstrates is a model of co-creation, co-investment, co-commitment, blurring the boundaries between the private and public sector, and bringing also international best practice to play. This is a far more complex model than a few academics or few leaders sitting at universities, developing a program, or developing a program, having an industry advisory committee that provides sporadic input, and here we go. That model is redundant. If we are going to progress and have a far more fundamentally different workforce, it has to be a team sport. It has to be a team sport. This program has produced for us during the first year and a half, amazing insights, amazing insights. We've learned that basically some of the students that came already with degrees in engineering, in geoscience, place. We even have beauticians and so on. We looked at entry requirements in a far more flexible manner, starting from the individual, from the human, and tailoring a bespoke approach. They are progressing amazingly. That we took them with the support of the Australian Industry Group and Karen Andrews' department, all of them, all 20 of them, the first cohort, all of them involved with different supply chain companies, all of them in industry practice, all of them with employment waiting for them, to Berlin, to Germany, Hanover, to see the industry there, to meet with counterparts, spend time in the Siemens Berlin Academy, meet the Prime Minister, who just couldn't stop talking to them. He was apparently more enchanted by them than some other things he saw in Germany. And it was inspirational, really. And of course, you could expect that, because it's about humans. It's about transforming people's lives. That's what this is about. Not making them redundant, not making them inadequate, but actually putting the time together to transform their lives in a way that will benefit industry, that will benefit our society. Now, our challenge is to scale that up. Our collective challenge is to scale that up. And that's where we usually struggle. It requires commitment, long-term. It requires resources. It requires everybody coming to the table and putting their effort and resources where their mouths are. To say it simply, this is no one single entity's responsibility. I always take offense when I hear government or any entity pointing the finger to an educational institutions, whether they be TAFE or higher ed, as the only responsible party for the product I produce. No one in the developed world looks at education and training in that manner. And we as a society have to evolve. The Siemens Academy also provided great insights and a lot of food for thought, because for one particular reason, this is what we're trying to also emulate within our test lab environments that we are rolling out nationally. It's not about just R&D. It's not about just developing new technology. It's about creating an environment, an enterprise environment, where we can build industry clusters together. They come in, they see new technology, they touch and feel, understand better, more deeply what Industry 4.0 is about, but also gain insights and help to develop or to improve their business models that will benefit from that technological approach, that will benefit from digitalization. Seek insights. How do you access global value chains? How do you transform your workforce, existing workforce, not just recruit new one? It's not just about, I always also find it awkward when we talk about future workforce. We have workforce right now. So it's current workforce that we're trying to transform. This is also one of the fundamental reasons why we've evolved our work, training, education, and test labs work stream into a collaborative effort that's chaired both by me and Andrew Detmar, who's the president of Australian Manufacturing Workers Union. As I said, it's a team sport. It is about workforce transformation. It's about transforming lives. It's not an academic activity. It's real life. So this is something that we feel is a far more appropriate way to approach this. And industry must be an active participant in that. We've then moved on with rolling out our national strategy of having an Industry 4.0 test lab developed in each of the states. We've started off with Swinburne. That's not only coupled by the investment and effort of the institution host, like Swinburne University in this case, but also Siemens coming on board and making a commitment to grant over $1 billion of industrial standard software to digitalize those test labs in each of the states that we've chosen. The first one was announced at Swinburne, and that one is in state of progress, the Factory of the Future, that will really evolve very rapidly into an Industry 4.0 enterprise, opening the doors to an industry cluster, to our SMEs, in a non-transactional, non-threatening manner, but in the true spirit of what we're trying to do collectively, and really committing to that journey long term. The next one was announced at University of Western Australia, which allows its focus on the advanced manufacturing, the industries that are kind of a really fertile ground for our workers that are coming from the former automotive sector, also looking at defense and aerospace sector, new materials. The Western Australian Test Lab at University of Western Australia is focused on resources industry, LNG production, the new technologies there. Recently, we've been in South Australia. The next announcement was at University of South Australia, which is focused on shipbuilding and digital shipyard, aligned with their strategy. The next one will be at University of Queensland, focused on energy. Then the next one at University of Technology Sydney, focused on medtech, pharma production. As you can see, each of the test labs, one in each state, is a starting platform, not a means to an end. It's a starting platform. We're establishing a platform, a learning environment that will represent a good reference for future test labs to be developed with or without other support. Each of those test labs is aligned with priority industry areas of this country, aligned with the relevant growth centers, aligned with the relevant industry growth areas of that state. Hence, we are encouraging each of those test labs and hosts not to rely only on the federal government, the growth centers, and Siemens, but to use that as a platform to engage actively with the relevant state governments and state-based industry clusters to further grow and develop. And we've set up some principles, guidelines, platform framework that I can use to progress that. And we are connecting them as a network. So there's shared experience between them. We're providing a vehicle for all of them to work and collaborate with similar, like-minded test labs internationally, whether that be in Germany, Singapore, US, and present use cases together, collaborative use cases, at G20 each year. So it's a kind of an ecosystem approach. We're closing the loop. Each of those test labs must have a cluster of industry partners connected to the test lab, at least 20 companies. And in fact, many of them are progressing in that way. Also in August, we are about to launch with Siemens at Swinburne the first Australian university-based Mindsphere Application and Development Center. Mindsphere is an Internet of Things open source platform. This is that essential ingredient of Industry 4.0. It's not enough just to have automation, just to have robotics, just to have digitalization. You have to connect and integrate the system using Internet of Things. And that Mindsphere platform is that glue that will connect all our hardware, software entities across the enterprise and use that framework or that platform for various verticals that we're interested in, whether that be in the energy area, whether that be for our manufacturing in the Factory of the Future, whether that be for transport, in other applications, smart cities, and so on. That is that essential ingredient. It's kind of our final digitalization kind of rollout within this strategy, and it will follow some of the learnings in Germany, but also some of the learnings that are currently present in the development center in Perth that Siemens has launched, which is an industry-based commercial development center. And that will spearhead some developments, in particular, in terms of accessing, using data, and getting more insights and intelligence out of data that then machine learning, artificial intelligence, and other applications can make the best use of going forward. It is all about data. At the end of the day, it's all about data and what we do with it. Finally, some of the key stakeholders that we've engaged, we've signed a memorandum of understanding with Engineers Australia, because this has many, when we talk about skills and capabilities, this has many implications. Part of it is accreditation. What's the point of us together innovating, disrupting the sector? If you get traditionalists come to accredited institution programs and say we can't accredit this because it's not like the mechanical engineering, electrical engineering program 20 years ago that we know. We have to change our insight, our mindset. It is different. Capability-driven versus discipline-driven. We'll see increasingly that global companies will actually pay less attention even to the degrees or certificates you hold, looking at evidence of the capabilities you have. That is a change in paradigms in education training, and we have to have our peak bodies and our accrediting bodies with us across all domains. We started with Engineers Australia, but there are others. Because the changing mindset has to evolve through collaboration. No one can do that in isolation from each other. So hence you can see, hopefully I've managed to kind of reflect on some of the key elements, key principles of those changing public-private sector partnership models that we're looking at. We're testing them. There will be more pilot programs. It is all learning by doing. We are making mistakes. We'll make no doubt more mistakes as we go, but we just keep at it. Keep at it. This is going to be messy, but you just keep at it and learn and improve. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have time for a few questions, and we have on either side roving microphones. So do we have any questions to start off with, please? Yes, we have one just here.
Sorry, Leon Drury, Manufacturing Skills Australia. I do have a question around, obviously what you're talking about is going to look at breaking down traditional models of vocation. How are you dealing with that issue? We have licensing arrangements, we have obviously industrial relations issues. How do we deal with those challenges when we're looking at models that are coming from other countries that don't have the traditions and that we currently have in Australia?
That's a really good question, and there are no ready-made answers in the process of engaging with everyone. And this is why this event, in addition to other things we're doing, is so important. We have to get all the stakeholders around the table and find appropriate solutions for us. In particular, when you look at education and training, going forward, it's not going to be a linear process. Our workforce, our young people, as well as our elderly people who are changing their careers, will change their careers more dynamically, will need to change their capabilities more dynamically. It won't be a passive process. So that will be coming in and out, coming in and out, coming in and out in different education and training programs. That will be accumulating their capabilities. So if you think of it that way, we very much, and this is I think where we've evolved further than maybe what you heard initially in the opening remarks from Karen, we see the education, training and research as one continuum. We organizationally separate things because it's easier to take those bite sizes and that's how we traditionally treat them. But we will need to look at that as a continuum, at least from the strategy point of view. And that will be, in the Industry 4.0 domain, far more connected via the level of capability you have. Even in the first pilot program in our TAFE that we've done in Industry 4.0, the students are doing things that people would never assume traditionally should be in a TAFE. They're developing digital twins, using PLM software that traditionally you would only find in higher ed, in a bachelor program. Later years, third or fourth, because even in bachelor program, academics thought, well, let's do 2 years of science-based education, then leave that practical high-level computational for later. There are so many traditional views and paradigms that we need to break. And if we don't do that, we will be relevant. Students will find other entities and elements who will do that for them, including industry. We will become irrelevant. So these constraints that we have and traditional understandings of what an apprenticeship is, what a bachelor program is, what a master's program is, we have to question these things. When you see such dynamic, unprecedented technological development and digitalization. Unprecedented. And it will take us by surprise, as already is. So we can't sleepwalk through that. We have to take control of that. So there's no ready answer. We have to sit together with peak bodies, with government, with accrediting bodies, and find those solutions that are appropriate for us quickly. Learn from experience offshore, but find our contextual solutions. Even we now see to grow our program. We are seeking, within the current framework, from government some concessions because all the places are capped. So we want to scale up, but you can't scale up because it's capped. And you can't do things where you don't have resources.
A question in the middle.
Keith Monaghan. I'm a chair of one of the IRCs and also now have my own consulting company. I worked in my career, probably 20 to 25 years in Tier 1 suppliers to the automotive, plus run a number of manufacturing companies. And in that career, I would have been recipient of training in this area. One thing that I still don't understand is what is 4.0. No one has, and we have to set guidance and training around that, and no one can define that. It goes back to the old problem solving. Find the problem first before you solve it. What are you guys trying to achieve in your programs for the outcome of the people that are doing it?
So, and that's a good question. And when you go broadly, even offshore, in some of those environments that I've mentioned, you will find that there's a diversity of understandings and so on. So part of these activities, releasing reports, engaging advocacy, is about clarifying these things and getting a much more clearer, conscious message around it. What we've done with our programs and what we're doing is we've focused initially on the key capabilities and key technologies and practices that Industry 4.0 domain requires in advanced manufacturing. Because Industry 4.0 is not only in advanced manufacturing, it's impacting health, it's impacting finance sector, it's impacting smart cities and transport, many domains. While some technology platforms are common and paradigms are common, how you apply this, how you develop it, systems, implications are very, very different. So our initial focus is basically on advanced manufacturing. We focused on key capabilities that we know we need, and that's been clarified through very deep engagement offshore and onshore. But at the end of the day, our Factory of the Future and these test labs that I mentioned have a further goal to clarify what the whole system is about when you connect all those technologies. When you put it in the context of Industry 4.0, when you have Internet of Things putting it all together, when you have a whole Factory of the Future driven by industrial internet applications and so on. The connectivity, the intelligence, the learning through the process that becomes autonomous without the human endeavor is where Industry 4.0 is heading. You won't walk into any factory today of any company and see an Industry 4.0 factory. It's not there yet, but it's evolving in that direction. One of the closest to that I've seen is perhaps the Siemens plant in Hamburg, where they produce 12 million PLCs, controllers in a year, electrical products, where 75% of the whole value chain in their manufacturing and design is currently digitalized, and 25% is not. Where you have a product on the manufacturing line that communicates with the machine. And if there's an error or a problem or bug, communicates to the machine that it is a problem. And machine self-adjusts. So the next product doesn't have the error with no human intervention. That's going in the Industry 4.0 domain. Why has that evolved out of Germany or US, or why we are so concerned? Because we are concerned with not competing on labor cost, but competing on innovation. and higher value add products. For knowledge-based economies and Western economies, that's paramount, or we'll see the whole manufacturing go. That's why it's so critical.
So how are you going to sell that to the potential customers? Now, you've got to, what you're saying is very good, and some of that comes from past and has been slowly developed up right through the future. I've set up lines with pokey oaks and self-correcting lines in the past. It's expanding on that development, and it's doing that further and further and expanding into the marketplace, be that in manufacturing, be that in public health, be that in infrastructure. How are we going to sell this to the customers?
I think the bigger challenge is not selling this to the customers, because customers around the world are voting with their feet. You can't access global value chains or become a supply chain partner of any of the global companies if you're not going in that direction. You're not working on the same standards of quality, of error, of waste, of speed, of efficiency. The problem is the industry will not be able to access the global value chains without working to that standards and capabilities. So that's one. Secondly, all experience already now, whether that be BMW, Mercedes, Siemens, Bosch, others, is showing that you're getting products that are consistent, higher quality, less error, less waste, better maintenance, better information. You don't have hierarchy. Everything is connected in an ecosystem. So the timeliness of support, timeliness of maintenance, timeliness of upgrades, of development is far, far superior than whatever it is. The issue is not selling this to the customers. The issue is more fundamental. How do we ensure that what we're doing with this technology and further technology diffusion is actually augmenting our workforce, and we're developing our workforce rather than replacing them? That's the key challenge. How do you sell that to your workforce? How do you transform your workforce concurrently? That's a key challenge.
Yeah, that's what I meant. They're the customer. How do you convince the customer, which could be your workforce, it could be the people employing those particular people,
No,
this is the way to go?
Customer is more a broader
No.
issue, yeah. But in terms of the workforce, that's the issue. And that's where the challenge is for each individual organization to develop their own Industry 4.0 strategy, because there's no one to hand them over a report that says this is your Industry 4.0 strategy. Working with stakeholders, learning by doing, developing your own Industry 4.0 strategy. What does that mean in your context, in your environment, for your company, for your factory? How are you going to develop a strategy that actually supports your business model or new business model that needs to evolve in a global setting? How is your business model going to address this issue of augmenting your workforce through growth rather than replacing your workforce because you're keeping your output steady and just working on efficiency? So it's not about further efficiencies and productivities. It's about growth. That's a paradigm.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, would you please thank Aleksander?